Hi, it's Andrew Burke from Code School Halifax again, and in our last few sessions we've been using a lot of JavaScript to add content to our page. So now we've got these big tables with rows and columns and names of countries and numbers and ratios and everything, and that's really awesome. But now it's time to go back to CSS and start styling this content. Now that it's there, we can start making it look better. And we're going to figure out some things about how to add CSS to tables, and we're also going to learn some new CSS techniques, things like pseudo-selectors and other things like that. So hang on, here we go. Here is our page, and here's it is with the latest numbers. And every time I do this, it's kind of nice. I do one of these every day, and every morning I sit to see that now there's almost 15,000 new people who've gotten past this whole thing in the last day, which is nice to see. The numbers keep going up. And anyway, so we've got ourselves our table that we've been building in JavaScript here, and you can see the HTML code in here, and here is the results. Now, we didn't do any special styling for this table, and as you can see, it kind of doesn't look great. It's okay, but the headings are centered, but the content is all left aligned, and with numbers, you don't really want them left aligned, maybe you want them right aligned. Also, it's all just a big open blob. It's kind of hard to tell across the way which ones are which, especially if you have a much larger window. It sort of stretches out. It's really hard to see what's what at this point. Okay, so this is where we can start going back into CSS and doing things to try to make this look a little better. Okay, so the first thing we can do with tables, for example, are add a border. Okay, we can do our standard 1 pixel solid and 1 and 8, 2, 8, 3. Okay, that's great, but that just puts a border around the table, which isn't actually what we wanted. Okay, so that's just the whole table. What we want to do is add some styling to the individual cells. Okay, so let's take this border thing and bring it out, and let's widen this a little bit because we're going to be playing a bit more in the CSS today. What we really want to do is have styling on our TDs. Okay, so that's the individual table cells, and here we can put that back and put a border around every TD. So let's take a look at that. Okay, sort of better, but you can see it kind of looks a little funny. And you can see there's padding and margins between the different cells, and they're kind of tightly cropped and everything. So first thing we want to do is actually a old classic. This look was great in 1995, but it's not so great anymore. It's a classic one for tables in general. And it's a magic word called border collapse, which just tells you can just tell it to collapse and not have these extra little funny bits here. Okay, so there we go. That's a little nicer, a bit more modern. And we can also add some padding inside these TDs. That's one quick way to make this look a bit better. Okay, so maybe 5 pixels. Okay, there we go. That's a little nicer. But we're still figuring out a few things. So let's make sure that the header also has the same content as the same sort of styling. Right now you see that H's don't have that. So we can do that. You can assign the same. Now we could just copy paste this and make this for TH as well, which would work. But if it's going to be exactly the same thing, it's easier to just specify things for 2 items at the same time, and you use that with a comma. Okay, so TD, comma TH will apply this styling to both of these sets of things. So you can actually have the same styling added to lots of things just by using commas and separating the selectors. So now the headers have it too. That's great. But I think every cell having its own little border is a little bit awkward, and we're going to maybe fix that. So instead of border, just full border, we can do maybe border bottom and see what that does. And now you can see that's looking a little nicer. It's not quite as much in your face. We've got these things along the ways. It's kind of cleaner and doesn't get in the way of the numbers. So that's nice. Okay, and we even have up here, we have our headings as well for that. So that's good, but let's see here. We got our country is aligned to the left, which is fine, but all these other ones should be aligned to the right. Now, we can, if we just say TD, text align right, okay, that moves everything to the right, which is maybe not what we want, especially up here. So this is a little awkward. But what we can do instead is we can put this out here, and we can actually, well, for example, we can make the items in this table aligned right. Okay, we can do this in various ways. What I often like to do is we know that our table is inside our by country ID. So we can actually specify only TDs within by country can be styled a certain way, for example. So if you do by country and then put a space in and then say TD, that means only TDs that are inside the by country area. Okay, and then we can do text align right. Okay, these stay centered. These ones switch over to being aligned right, except we don't want these country names to be aligned to the left. So we can do that as well by giving our country cell a class of country name or something like that. Okay, now you see we've got single quotes inside because we have double quotes outside. This is why it's kind of handy. You can use single quotes in your HTML as well. This is why it's handy to be able to swap double quotes and single quotes around, because if you put double quotes in, it will get very confused because it thinks it's going to be outside of our JavaScript and it gets really weird. So single quotes make it easier. There we go. So we have our country name, and now we can just do that in here and do country name text align left. Oh, but now this is one of the tricky things with CSS. Because we said country name, that should move it to the left. However, up here we've specified TDs inside by country. And this is specifying 2 levels of specificity. So it's the thing with this ID plus TDs inside that. That takes precedence over just saying country name. This is one of these weird, messy things with CSS. This is one of the reasons CSS can really hurt your head after a while, is you can have things, different styles applied to the same elements from different kinds of selectors and statements, and CSS has to decide which ones actually work or which ones to do. And it does this with a complicated series of things called precedents. And there's a whole list you can find on the internet. But basically, the main thing is the more steps you have for describing what a thing is, and the more specific it is, that one's going to take prominence. Okay, so this is just saying country name. This is 2 specific things. TDs inside something with an ID of by country. Also, IDs take precedence over classes, so you can get specific that way. So we could make this instead country name TD country name. So this is a thing, a TD, that's got a class of country name. Let's see what that does. That still doesn't quite come, but it can also be inside by country. So it's by country and TD country name. So there's 3 different specifics. Let's see how that does. There we go. Now you can see these are aligned left, these are aligned right. Okay, so this is where CSS starts to get a little crazy. We can also do that with TH. Okay, we can even add a class up here. And in that case, we might just want to go back to our class specifics and let's see if that works. Okay, that's a little better. So we don't even have to specify TD as long as we're coming down this way and we have several specifics. Anyway, so you can see here, country is now aligned left. All this other information is aligned right. So that is a bit cleaner. Okay. Let's try another few things. One other thing that's kind of nice I like with tables, instead of these lines, which is fine, but it's kind of busy and we don't really necessarily want to do that so much. Instead of lines, we can also actually do things with what are called pseudo-selectors. Okay, and that lets us do things like every alternating row. So what I'd like to do is have every alternating row a slightly different shade. And you can do that. And of course, rows are going to be like that. And we'll want to then use a colon. Okay, that tells it this is a pseudo-selector of a thing. And of type. This is, now we can make it every like 2, and that'll make a background. So let's do that, and we'll do our background color. And we'll do start with our 188 thing, but let's pick something a little paler. Okay, so it's just going to get a very slight gray difference because we're going from white to this sort of faded version of this color. Okay, so let's go to that, and I'll show you that if we do nth of type, okay, it can be a number, in which case this will only be the second, okay, Let's say 5. See what that does. Okay, moves it down there. You can see that. So this includes every TR, including the TH. So that's kind of pointless. I mean, it's okay, but it's not really that useful. But we can also say odd. And now every odd item has the shading. Or we can do even as well. Okay, that's a little nicer. And then we can also get rid of this border because I don't think we really need it. And now we have our nice alternating table. Okay, we still have this up here because we didn't specify tightly enough. So let's take our by country and put this here. And now we've got our little list here. Okay, that's one kind of cool pseudo-selector. There's another kind of cool pseudo-selector that's even more fun. It's called hover, and that's when you have your mouse over top of something, it'll switch to this CSS. So let's take this background color and let's find something a little bit darker. Okay, just a little bit, like maybe sort of a faded gray, maybe something like that. Okay, save that, let's reload. And now when you roll over, you can see there, it gives us our darker gray, and maybe we can even make our color white. So now it really highlights the thing you're covering. Now, this may not look great. I find a little bit of this kind of thing goes a long, long way, but you can sort of see how you can make a table much more dynamic and interesting very quickly with just a few of these pseudo-selectors that add stuff. Okay, and there we go. That's some of our CSS that makes things a little nicer to work with. And of course, don't forget to put your thing into Git so that you can, especially when you're doing CSS work, I find I often do things and then it gets really ugly and I realize, oh my gosh, it's such a hideous mess because I got the wrong colors or something. It's easier often to just roll back to where we were before. So there we go. We add our items to our commit, and then we can go here and say styling for table. There we go. Okay, so that way, if we start adding really strange colors and things get all messy, let's go pink, for example, and green. Okay, oh my God, what a nightmare, right? If we suddenly decide to do something crazy like this and we realize we've really, really messed ourselves up, we can totally just go back here, roll back those changes, and we're back where we were. Okay, so that's why CSS and Git work so well together, because I find it's really easy to make a mess. And there we go. So that's it for our styling. And our next episode, we're going to start adding pictures to things and get some PNGs and GIFs and some background images and things like that. Okay, so stay tuned.